In this video, we're going to talk about formatting. This this content is also not included in Gaddis in great detail, and so I'm including data here from or slides here from a different textbook, a Murak Java book. But this information is available in this slide deck as well as on the internet in a number of places. So we can format numbers. There are some built-in formatters in Java. We've seen an example of this already with the currency. So we use a built-in library called number format. We have to use an include or an import rather to import the java.text.number format, at which point we can use these three instances, get a currency formatter, a percent formatter, or a number formatter. And then each of these has a format function built in. So we can, once we create a currency formatter, then we can call the format method on that currency format object, and we can give it a numeric value, and we'll get back a string value that's formatted to look at currency. The way that the method that it uses to format currency is based on what's called the locale of your computer. So your computer is configured to be located in the United States or in France or in Germany or South America or Brazil or wherever you are. And then that will dictate what your locale is. And then when you run these formatters, you will get a formatted currency that matches the thousand separator, the decimal points, the currency code, et cetera. That is standard in that particular country. So if you don't specify the locale, then you get the default locale from your computer. You can also add a parameter here and specify. So if you wanted to play around with this and say format this according to France or somewhere in the Eurozone, then you could see that and how that works. There's also minimum and fraction digits here in addition to the format. So you can say maybe if you're formatting for percent and you want to see 5 decimal points, then you can set those for minimum and maximum points here between the percent of the numbers if you want to see additional decimal precision. This is how it works. You create a variable called currency. In this case, it's of type number format. We create it using this static method, numberFormat.getCurrency instance. We then, currency is now an object that is a currency formatter. We can then use the format. So in this case, if you send 11.575 in to the format method, you get back a string value that is $11.58. Notice that it's doing a standard round, rounding up at 5 for this, and it will truncate to 2 decimal points because that is the standard for formatting dollars in the United States. And we get the US dollar sign here because that's the locale of our computer. If we were running this in France, then we would get the euro sign. Here's how percent works. It works the same way as the currency format, but you use the get percent instance instead of a currency instance. Then you run the format, and you get back formatted with 50%. You can use the min and maximal decimal points here if you wanted to. These minimum fraction digits if you wanted to get additional decimal points on this 50.1, 50.10 kind of thing. Then also you can use decimal points. I don't use this much because we're going to learn about printf, which allows you to do some rounding of numeric values. So typically I just use the percentage and the currency formatters. This one is available though, if you want to do that. Note that these actually are returning string values. So maybe if you if you're trying to put something into a string variable or something like that, then this might be appropriate. But typically I don't use this method for formatting numeric digits when I'm writing to the console. I just format them using the printf method. You can also you don't have to create a separate instance if you're just doing one format. You can run it all together in a single line. You don't actually have to create the currency instance or the percent instance in this case. If you want to format more than one number, then you're going to want to create an instance, create a variable, and use that format. But if you're only doing one number, you don't necessarily need to do that. Okay, for quick formatting of outputs, we use something that's known as string interpolation. In Java, string interpolation is implemented using a printf function. So this would be system.out.printf instead of println or print, system.out.printf. And it takes one parameter, which is a string, this is your formatted string. And then it takes a series of arguments. And so these arguments, this is the length of this list of this comma delimited list of arguments depends on how many replacement values you have in the format. So let's see an example. Here's the example of a format specification. So inside the format, you will include format specifications. The format specification always starts with a percent sign. It then includes flags with the decimal points and then the type of data that you're expecting. This describes the type of data. You can format decimals, floating point. You can use strings, case sensitive or uppercase, and you can use a new line. We will typically use the F and the S here for doing this, and then we'll use the D. The D in our case will actually be for, it says decimal integer, but this is just an integer value. A floating point would be a double. If we're trying to format something with decimal precision, we would use the F. If we're just trying to format an integer, maybe we're just trying to include an integer in output, we would use the D, and then we use the S for string value, and then we use the N for new line. Of course, all of these would be included in these formats using the percent at the beginning, percent, the flags, and the type code here would be the D. So you would have additional data that's in front of that. So let's look at some examples. There's 1,000 separators. These are the flags, 1,000 separators, and a dash to indicate width. So if you're trying to build things in columns, you can use the printf with dash and some width specifiers to do that. Here is an actual example. So here's our format code. %s is %d years old, period, %n. So this is going to take a string value, then it's going to take an integer value, and it's going to replace it. So this is my format code, and then I give it two variables here. So the first name will be replaced here on the %s, and the age will be replaced here on %d. You can see this is my output. Joel is 39 years old. So this allows me to, has similar functionality to the concatenation that we use with print line using the plus signs, but this allows me to type this out in maybe something that's a little more obvious to the reader, and it also allows me to do some formatting and decimal precision, which we'll see in subsequent examples. Also note that we must use the %n here for the new line. The printf by default does not add the new line. So when we use print line, we automatically go to the next line on the console. With printf, you are required to, you must include that %n before you go to the next line. Here's some more examples. This one is actually doing some decimal precision formatting. Here we're using %f with price, in which case we get the entire price with 5 decimal points. Here we're using comma 0.2f. This means use the 1,000 separator of a comma. Give me 2 decimal points, and it's a floating type, and we see we get 99,000, 999.99. So we get our 1,000 separator here and our 2 decimal points. Okay. Here we're using some width. So we want to say, give me a string of width 10, then give me a number here that's going to be implemented. So in this case, this is string. This is a %10, a column of 10 with a string value, and then this is the second format specifier here, which is give me the a comma. The comma means 1,000 separators. Give me width of 10, another column of 10. Give me 2 decimal points using a floating point or decimal data. We then send the label and the price. So the label here is price with the colon, and we see it is inserted here, taking up 10 decimal positions. And then we get the second column here, which is going to be right justified using the 1,000 separator with the aligning at the period. So in this case, we're using the dash here, which means that our data is going to be left justified. So we're justifying the label to the left, but without the dash here, it's going to be careful and look at that. We're just going to see the value justified to the right, which is why in these two examples, our data is lined up on the decimal point. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and you're seeing in what you see here. Two format specifiers here, 3 if you include the new line. First one is the format specifier for a left justified string with a column of 10 spaces. The second is this one, It is a column of 10 with a right justified, thousands, double value with a thousand separator and 2 decimal points. And then you have the %n. And then we see this is the same 3 format specifiers as the first line, only it uses different values in the argument list. Okay, I hope that makes sense. We will do an example in a subsequent video to get some muscle memory on how to implement these.